Welcome to unit number 7 in our course Reading English for Academic Purposes. My name is Rita. The text that we're going to be doing today is called From Savers to Spenders, How Children Became a Consumer Market. These are the learning strategies that we're going to be focusing on today. We're going to be focusing on pre-reading, קריאה. We're going to be looking at the eye-catching features as we usually do in every text. We're going to be focusing on scanning the text, לסרוק. We're going to be focusing on the relationship between cause and result, comparison and contrast, the connection between the main idea and an example. We're going to be looking at the writer's argument, definition, and also we're going to apply information, כן, ליישם אינפורמציה מתוך הטקסט על מקרה אחר. The objectives for this unit is that we're going to learn about a change in the spending habits of children. We're going to learn how writers develop their arguments. We're going to look at the use of positive and negative vocabulary to express a writer's attitude. We're going to be looking at patterns of cause and effect. And also, we're going to be looking at definition. Now, more specifically, for our first lesson, we're going to be focusing on the pre-reading, קריאה. We're going to be looking at the eye-catching features in this text, כן? כל אותם פריטים שתופסים את העין כדי למצוא את הנושא המרכזי של הטקסט. We're going to look at the purpose of the introductory section, כן? מה המטרה בקטע, במבוא של הטקסט. We're going to be looking at the writer's attitude, what the writer thinks about the subject. We're going to be also focusing on vocabulary, אוצר מילים. So let's begin with our pre-reading and looking at what are the eye-catching features in this text. So the first thing we have the title, From Savers to Spenders, How Children Became a Consumer Market. Now remember the title, use your dictionary if you don't know the meaning of each of the words. Okay, and we're going to come back to the title a little later. So we have the title. We also have the author's name. The author is James U. McNeill. Now, at the bottom or at the end of the text, we also have a description of the writer, and we also have the source. Now, what kind of information can we get from the description of the writer and the source? The information is that we can get the field, the academic field of study, כן? מה התחום המקצועי? וזה כמובן ייתן לנו הקשר, כן? הנושא הזה של ילדים כצרכנים, מאיזה תחום זה מגיע. And now notice all of the words, the word market, markets, marketing, okay? All of these words tell us that it's going to be dealing with שיווק, וכיצד ילדים הפכו להיות שוק של צרכנים. Now, the writer of this text also wrote the book where this text is taken from. And he wrote a book called Children as Consumers, כן, ילדים כצרכנים, Insights and Implications, תובנות והשלכות. So it tells us that this writer is a professional and knows a lot about the subject of children as consumers. כן, עוד פעם, ילדים כצרכנים. Now, other eye-catching features are the section headings. Okay, the section heading for section number 2 is called 3 Markets in 1. Okay, 3 שווקים באחד. And also, the third section is called Parents Prepare Children. כן, ההורים מכינים ילדים. So now let's go back to the title, and let's look at each and every word. And let's see what additional information I can get from the title. So the title says, From Savers to Spenders, מחסכנים לבזבזנים. Okay? Now you should notice the words from and to. It tells us that we're going through some sort of transition or change. כן? שאנחנו עוברים משלב אחד לשלב אחר, מחסכנים לבזבזנים. The second part of the title says, How Children Became a Consumer Market. כיצד ילדים הפכו להיות שוק של צרכנים. מה שזה מרמז לי שיש פה איזשהו מעבר, איזושהי מגמה, כנראה מאיזשהו מצב קודם למצב עתידי או עכשווי. Okay, keep that in mind when we begin reading the text. Okay, so now we're going to focus on the introductory section, כן, על המבוא. And what we want you to do is to read the first sentences of paragraphs 1 till 5 and think about the question, what is the purpose of this section? כן? מה המטרה של הקטע המבואי הזה? ותחשבי איזה מידע הכותבים מנסים להעביר לנו בקטע הראשון. Now, if you were focusing on the first sentences of paragraphs 1 till 5, I'm sure you noticed words like there was a time, in fact 30 or 40 years ago. כן? פעם לפני 30-40 שנה. Children were not spoken of as spenders or consumers, but as savers and future consumers. Okay? Now, let's continue to the first sentence of paragraph 2. It says here, children received allowances. כן, ילדים קיבלו. עוד פעם יש פה אזכור של העבר. In paragraph 3, we have the words was of concern. Okay, הייתה דאגה. So again, we're talking about the past. And then in paragraph 4, all of a sudden we have the words, all that changed. כל זה השתנה. אז גם כן זה מילים שאומר שיש לנו איזשהו מעבר בין מה שקרה בעבר למה שקורה היום. And then if you look at paragraph 5, we have the word of contrast but, אבל. Okay? זה נותן לנו ניגוד למה שנאמר קודם, but today. So this reinforces ומחזק שיש פה השוואה בין העבר להווה, כיצד ראו ילדים בעבר לעומת כיצד רואים ילדים היום. So but today children are viewed as a viable market. כן? היום רואים בילדים כאיזשהו שוק בר קיימא, שוק שצריך להתייחס אליו. So now, how do we formulate the answer? איך אנחנו מנסחים בעצם את התשובה? מה המטרה של הקטע המבואי? והתשובה יכולה לראות כך. The purpose is to show the difference in how children were viewed in the past as savers and how today they are seen as consumers. כן? כיצד שבעבר ראו ילדים כחסכנים, והיום רואים ילדים כשוק של צרכנים. Okay, so let's continue reading the first and last sentences of the last paragraph. So now we're going to jump to paragraph 18. It's the last paragraph of the text. And we already know that the last paragraph gives us many times the conclusion, כן? המסקנות, והרבה פעמים גם בפסקה האחרונה אנחנו גם מקבלים אולי את דעתם או דעתו של הכותב. So let's look at the following question. Is the writer's attitude about the relationship between marketers and child consumers positive or negative? Okay, so let's read the question again and let's try to divide the question so we can understand it. So here we have to focus on the writer's attitude. מה גישתו של הכותב לגבי הקשר בין משווקים וילדים? האם הוא רואה את הקשר הזה כמשהו חיובי או שלילי? Okay, so think about that and read paragraph 18. So let's see paragraph 18. It says here, the plain fact of the matter is that something needs to be done to improve the marketing child-consumer connection. So the writer is saying that there's some sort of a problem between the connection of the marketer and the child, בין המשווק לבין הילד. יש פה איזושהי בעייתיות מסוימת. And if you keep on reading the end of paragraph 18, it says here, but no one should forget that children, particularly those under 8, are vulnerable to commercial abuses. Marketers have been shown to be abusive to children far too many times for their goodwill to be assumed. So again, you should notice the words abuses, abusive, okay? פה הכוונה ב-abuse ו-abusive זה לא התעללות, אלא שימוש לרעה. So the writer is warning us that marketers, okay, can be abusive towards children in the fact that they maybe use their power in a negative way. Okay? So from this, we can assume that the writer's attitude is negative. So let's continue with other words that we will see in the text, and it's important to understand their meaning before we continue reading. Okay? Now what we have here on the left is a list of all of the words that are connected to marketing, okay, or to people that are connected to marketing. Now if you notice the ER at the end of each word, ER tells me that this is the person who is doing the actions. האדם שמבצע את הפעולה. So we have words like customer, retailer, manufacturer, financer, purchaser, advertiser, and marketer. So look at the meanings in Hebrew and try to match the correct meaning in Hebrew to the word in English. Now before you go to the dictionary, try and see how many of them you know by yourself, and the words that are left, and go to the dictionary and find the meaning for them. So let's look at the answers for people connected to marketing and what is the meaning of the word in Hebrew. So the first one was customer. Customer means צרכן. Retailer, קמעונאי. כן, אותם מוכרים בחנויות. Manufacturer, יצרן. Financer, מממן. Purchaser, זה קונה. Advertiser, מפרסם או פרסומאי, תלוי בהקשר. And the word marketer, which of course is a main word in our text, משווק. So let's sum up what we've done in the first lesson. We already know from the eye-catching features and even the vocabulary that we will be reading a text on the change in consumer behavior of children. כן? אנחנו נקרא על השינוי שעבר על ילדים כצרכנים מעבר להיום. We also know that the writer warns us of the potential abuse by marketers. So we also know that the writer's attitude is in somewhat, he is concerned. כן? הוא מודאג מהשימוש לרעה הפוטנציאלי של המשווקים את הכוח שלהם על ילדים, על הצרכנים החדשים.